Hello and welcome to the second episode of Tater Talk, the podcast about Apopka. So real quick, I just want to explain our name. It's kind of a play on words for tater tot because Apopka means potato eating place or potato eating people in the Seminole language. So I just had forgotten to mention that in the first episode, but that's our little fun name. So my name is Joshua, and it is my honor today to introduce our second guest, Miss Francina Boykins. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
So, Miss Francina Boykins, for those who don't know, is a community historian who has been our vice president here at the museum for 3 years now, and has been a voice for Apopka's history and community, especially black community, for even longer. She graduated with a degree in elementary education at the University of North Florida in 1975 and is also a co-founder of the Democracy Forum's Ocoee Race Riot Research Project. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So can you first tell us a bit about your family and childhood here in Apopka?
I was born in Apopka in 1950. My family from my mother's side migrated to Apopka from Alabama, and my dad's side of the family migrated to the area from St. Augustine. Being born here in Apopka, I grew up on 13th Street, later moving into...
And that's where you were born, 13th?
I was born on 13th Street.
In the house?
I was a midwife baby,
Right.
born home, and was born in a neighborhood known as Dolly Quarters.
I've heard of that, yep. And what is your favorite aspects of Apopka's culture during the 50s and 60s?
My favorite aspect of the culture, it was very rich in that, your neighbors and, growing up on 13th Street, there was great cohesiveness among the neighbors. Everybody who lived on 13th Street pretty much contributed something along the lines of if it was church, education, food. Growing up, I remember my family having a garden.
Right.
We had chickens.
Yeah, very similar to the first episode, my grandmother's childhood. There was a big agriculture and garden lifestyle. And how many siblings did you have?
There were eight.
Eight of you.
Including myself.
Right.
Siblings.
And what first got you interested in history? Was that something that started as a child or came later?
I could say my childhood because at the age of 14, I was a member of the local youth NAACP chapter, which the NAACP president was a Mr. Faitha Dowdell, who he was deacon at the Pleasant View Baptist Church where I attended.
You attended, okay.
My family attended.
Yes.
And so he would hold meetings at the church during the early 60s. So around the age of 14, I began becoming interested, but didn't know to what extent it was going to take me as far as the history aspect as I recognize now.
And which schools did you go to as a child?
I attended Phyllis Wheatley Elementary, Junior and Senior High School. I was a student at Phyllis Wheatley because Phyllis Wheatley once hosted classes from the 1st through the 12th grade, which was quite unique in that attending Phyllis Wheatley School until 1969 when the high school portion or the section was discontinued because of a federal court order mandating that the black students,
Desegregation.
desegregation of the schools. So I was there at Phyllis Wheatley until I became a senior. But my senior year, I would transfer to Apopka Memorial High School, where I graduated in 1970.
Right. And during your childhood, for those who may not know, there was a city ordinance that black people were only allowed to live south of the railroad in Apopka. Something that you were not aware of till you were older.
I was not aware that of the ordinance of that was passed by the city in 1937 as to why the majority of the black citizens at that time was living south of the Tavares Orlando Atlantic Railroad.
Right.
And so totally oblivious to the ordinance until
that
later
this was
years.
Something actually in law and not
that it was a
just
law.
how things happened naturally.
The law was repealed in 1968, and that was the year before the schools desegregated. But I did not learn of that law until returning to Apopka in the 80s that this law actually existed. I was reading the Northwest Orange County history, Apopka Northwest Orange County history, written by Jerome Schaffner, whom he had written about that ordinance, and I called and asked him about the ordinance, and so he said yes, he had discovered that, and one of the persons who fought against the ordinance was a Reverend Morris Chisholm, who lived in the area known as Meads Bottom, which we'll probably talk about later because Meads Bottom itself is a very extraordinary community where early black settlers came.
Wow. And how would you describe your experience with, you've dubbed it the psychological traumas of school desegregation in 1969? How would you explain that to someone who did not grow up during that time?
The psychological traumas of school desegregation meant giving up what, as a black student, the culture, the friends, the family, anything that had to do with being in, the predominantly black community, because our school was everything to me. And to be told during the summer of 1969 that I would not be returning to Phyllis Wheatley was quite devastating.
Because the school was getting shut down?
The high school portion of the school was going to be discontinued.
Yes.
And so now having to adapt to a whole new school, new friends. I must say that the school year 69-70 went somewhat smooth considering what was happening around the country itself.
Right.
With desegregating of schools, and to have to give up whatever status you had, in the black, in a predominantly black institution, and to integrate into where you would be only maybe one black in a class, or even to the sports aspect of it, clubs, organizations, because you have to realize, the year before your senior year, they've already selected who was going to be in what positions with clubs and organizations, whether it was the band or the football team or basketball. I didn't play any sports, but to now integrate what was already established, it was pretty tough that year, but we persevered, and the whole thing was, and we had been kind of forewarned by our black teachers that we were going to have to step up. We was going to be competing. You
were going to be the generation that had to overcome this divide and struggle. Took a gap a gap year, was it?
Yes,
for high
I
school?
had dropped out of school at the age of 16 and was not going to return. And the
So
principal,
how did you decide to come back after
I was
a
encouraged by the
seemingly
principal of Apopka
okay?
High School, who was Mr. Roger Williams, that because that had happened to me as a teenager, that I should be allowed to come back to school. He was my inspiration as far as inspiring me and encouraging me that I needed an education.
Okay.
And so I never looked back. I graduated, and
And was he also the one that wanted you to go to UNF in Jacksonville?
no, it was the recruiter from UNF came aboard,
okay.
came at a time during the summer months to Valencia. After graduating from Apopka High School, I was able to attend Valencia Junior College at that time. And while at Valencia Junior College, I was completing the 2-year program when the recruiter from UNF came and asked what was I planning to do after Valencia. And really, I had no clue. And he handed me a college catalog, and I gave him my address and phone number, and he stayed in touch with me until I was actually there on campus.
Wow, they do not do that nowadays.
So he was
as
relentless.
a student.
Well, at that time, the University of North Florida was struggling to recruit black students.
And University of North Florida was also just founded in 1972, was
1972, they opened their doors for the first classes to attend in the fall of 1972.
And what sorts of issues did you experience at UNF? I know you, particularly with the race relations class, there was some problems that you had to overcome.
At UNF, you're speaking post-civil rights era, and everybody, or the institution itself, being that black students, I always say that I wasn't, I was tolerated as a student because university was receiving federal money, so they had to
they had to comply.
They had to comply. So, there were situations wherein, as a black student, being a black student, I had to work harder. There was always challenges, and there was a thing going on.
And I think this is a bigger topic of, did the civil rights era really end with desegregation? There was still a lot of work to be done afterwards and repercussions to be felt.
Oh, yes. And one of the classes, I was encouraged by another student to take a race relations class. It was the only class that was taught in the history of the Florida University system. The class was Human Conflict, Black and White. The class was divided by race and sex. No books, no pencils. It was only the professor who would give a topic that the students would have to discuss, and it was
So it was almost
heated.
like an experimental.
It was
type
very
class.
much experimental.
Was it the professor's decision to have this set up, or was it the higher authorities?
The professor came up with the idea to teach the class. One of his close friends was one of the Mississippi Three, Michael Schwerner.
Okay.
Michael Schwerner had been killed in the voting the summer of, I forget what year it was during the 1960s.
60s, okay.
That his friend had been murdered along with 2 other civil rights workers who had came down to Mississippi.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Kranz, in honor of his friend, was inspired to teach the class on race relations because he had taken a similar class from some other professors whose names I can't remember, somewhere in the northern sections. And UNF was open at that time for just filling in the gaps with classes.
Right.
So he taught the class from 1972 until 1977. And one of the highlights of the class, as a black student, you had to live in a white home for a week, vice versa. And we would go out and test places in the city.
In Jacksonville.
In Jacksonville, posing as biracial couple, interracial couple.
Okay.
Two blacks would go to, say, looking for an apartment and be turned away, while two whites would get accepted at a park.
Yeah.
This was happening in Duval County in 1970s.
Wow. And Dr.
Peter Kranz.
Was he black or white?
Dr. Peter Kranz was Jewish.
Oh, okay.
He was Jewish.
Interesting.
Yes.
And so a typical class, what did that look like?
It was 12 people in the class.
Oh, okay.
3 blacks, females, 3 black males, 3 white females, 3 white males.
Okay.
So the class was
Evenly
based on race and sex. So it would be equal, the experiences that we would encounter.
Okay. Now, I know you've mentioned before that you got involved with activism at UNF and in Jacksonville.
Yes.
Could you expand upon that a little bit for our listeners?
Okay, Jacksonville was like the testing ground or the testing place for any programs through the federal agencies. It was like a play catch up with the post-civil rights era. And so as a student, there was always intern positions throughout the city. Mm-hmm. And I participated in those programs. They were housing, which is now Section 8. In the days when I interned, it was the Experimental Housing Assistant Program.
So that was the roots of modern day Section 8.
Section 8. Then there was the daycare program. There was the neighborhood planning, to go into neighborhoods where poor people live, to come up with services. Matter of fact, I was working in Jacksonville poorest community, one of their poorest communities, which was on the northwest quadrant of Jacksonville, where people at that time still had outdoor toilets and open drainage. Right. And the city had just consolidated their government in 1968, because Jacksonville, as many know, is the largest city land-wise, I think, in the United States. So here I was from Apopka, and being an intern in these various social service programs, because they normally would have to hire a person of color. Right. And I was monitoring the food stamp program. I would travel in southern Georgia to make sure that people who were receiving funds either through the food stamp program, like grocery stores, I had to do inventories to make sure they had staple items, like not a lot of snack food.
So you know a lot about the startup of the welfare system.
Yes, basically I did. And it kind of prepared me to be more of an activist for people, because there was a need, for a voice for people, because the services were there, people just did not know how to apply themselves.
Yes, it's definitely very interesting for me, since I'm from Apopka and am now studying at UNF, like comparing my experience to the one that you had. It's just very intriguing.
Well, when I was at UNF, there was no dormitories, there was no civic or social activities.
And they were still constructing.
They were still under construction.
Yeah, and that was whenever it was just swampland, and
it wasn't what I thought college life was supposed to be. Because many of the students, especially students of color, were being recruited to Florida A&M, which is HBCU.
So were you one of the only in your classes? Usually, were you one of the only black women? would you say?
Yeah, some classes, because it was a very small population of black students at that time.
Yeah.
But I graduated with a degree in elementary education, and I graduated in 1975.
75.
Yeah,
and
50
then,
years ago. Woo, jeez,
wow.
where did the time go?
And then how did you decide to come back to your hometown, Apopka?
That's a good question. I was pretty much jobless and had taken advantage.
So you were like, let me run home to mama.
Yeah, I told my mom, it was in 81, I returned because I was in Jacksonville almost 10 years. I called her one day because I had become very vocal in Duval County, and I was considered by many persona non grata because I was the voice of the people and I wasn't backing away. I was coming full throttle to, hey, look, you got to take care of these people.
And we definitely need to do a whole episode on your activism up there.
Yeah, so I came back in 81. I called my mom. I said, I'm coming for a job interview. I think I'm going to come back to the area. So I've been here ever since.
Yep. So how did you, so first of all, for those who might not know, could you explain what the Ocoee race riot was and why it's significant to Apopka as well?
The Ocoee race riot, I joined a group of citizens. There were about 30 people who were inspired to research why many black people didn't go to Ocoee, or why was there fear. And little did I know, growing up in the neighborhood, that what had happened, that it was such a catastrophe there. You know, here I am now in my 50s, and someone's telling me that, you know, black people disappeared from this town. And as growing up, if we were on the school bus passing the area, we always bypassed Ocoee. And the bus driver would say, tell us to quiet down because they didn't want to awaken or get the attention of the racism that was still taking place in that city. So in 1997, I became involved with the group Democracy Forum, and our mission was to educate people of Central Florida at that time about what had happened. We did.
So it was not even a known historical fact back then.
It was very quiet.
But it was
nobody would talk about it.
Okay.
No one talked about, or I didn't learn in school or from anyone.
Yeah.
What had actually taken place? That someone had been taken, like for July Perry, who was the town leader, black leader, was taken from Ocoee and taken downtown Orlando and hung, and that 200 plus black people disappeared from Ocoee after the election. It was known as the United States' deadliest election day in history. Happened here in Central Florida. So that has been my passion. I've worked with numerous students over the years as we continue to explore what happened in 1920 in Ocoee.
1920. So could you better sort of paint the picture for us what that day looked like in 1920 based on what y'all have researched and found?
I would say, I will quote one of the survivors who our Democracy Forum located. His name was Armstrong Hightower. He was 13 years old when he left Ocoee, and all he could see behind him was smoke and flames. And he describes it as the night the devil got loose in Ocoee.
Wow. And
that's how he remembered that night. He said it was something to do with his birthday, supposed to have been. He was supposed to have a party. He was 13 years old. A reporter went to Fort Lauderdale and brought Mr. Hightower back to Ocoee after he had been gone for almost 80 plus years. And he said to that reporter, "What took you all so long?" In essence, nobody had come and questioned anyone. Many people, descendants, everyone had pretty much remained silent, black and white. You had no black people living in Ocoee until the early 1980s. That a few black people moved back into the town, and they were oblivious as well as to what had happened, and they bear the pain or taunts and harassment, unknowing to them the history behind it.
Right. And, you know, the black community of Apopka is, many of our residents are descended from
we have
people who fled from Ocoee.
There were refugees from Ocoee, black refugees who came to Apopka. The Hickey family, the Franks family, the Brown family. Those are the ones that we, you know, because the families who were given safe passage, you know, they was throughout Central Florida, you know, hiding out, and I think there was still that fear from the whites who lived there that there would be retribution from the blacks fearful of the retribution, that they had done something wrong, and all they were trying to do was
the
vote.
perpetrators of the race riot were Klansmen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were known as Klansmen. The Klansmen had marched in Orlando a few days before, you know, saying what would happen if, you know, black people voted. And so July Perry and Mose Norman, both black, voted. Well, they attempted to vote. We don't have documentation for sure that either got to vote, because they both, Mose Norman was beaten and he left the polls and never was heard of again. I think the reporter had that he was living in Harlem, New York. He made it to Harlem, New York.
Wow.
And we have documentation because he negotiated the sale of his property while he was in New York City.
Okay.
Through a broker here who was Sarah Mead's daughter. Sarah Mead is an early black settler who introduced Mead's Bottom.
Right.
Her daughter was a real estate broker at that time, and she brokered the deal for Mose Norman. That's that Apopka connection and that Ocoee connection there through our documents. Yeah. We had key pieces of evidence of that research was the census list of 1910 and 20 showing black people living in Ocoee. The death certificate of July Perry, which I had obtained when I traveled to Jacksonville to the University of North Florida, because the University of North Florida had the NAACP's anti-lynching records on microfiche at the library, and we were told. So we went there, and we found a letter in those files from a woman, Mrs. Annie Hamilton, who was trying to reach out beyond Ocoee. She smuggled this letter in a crate of citrus to a friend to the north to tell her one of the most wickedest things is happening right now.
Wow.
And black
what
people
a crazy story.
Black people are being forced to sell and leave their homes
and this is
behind.
what fueled the great migration to the north of all these lynchings and discrimination happening. So Ocoee race riot is definitely very central to Orange County's history, Florida's history. So I just wanted to thank you for all the work that you have done with that.
And it's ongoing.
And it's still ongoing.
It's still ongoing. I get students reach out to me quite frequently, and that was one of the goals, is to educate the community. And there's multiple documentaries now. There's a curriculum in our school system that teaches some
and we also have the scholarship
the scholarships
too, which is
there are
great.
Scholarships for
as well as Rosewood.
Yeah, Rosewood, yes.
Another.
And Ocoee happened before Rosewood. Rosewood happened in 1923. And Ocoee, massacre happened in 1920.
Okay.
November the 2nd, 1920.
Okay. So on another note, talking about our museum here, when did you first get involved with the Apopka Museum?
I became involved with the Apopka Museum through mutual friends and colleagues, former teacher Marie Gladden, who was a very prominent educator in this community, and Mildred Board. I would bring them to meetings, mainly Mrs. Board. I would bring her. She was a member of the Historical Society at the time, and she was basically planting a seed by having me bring her to the different events here at the Apopka Historical Society.
And this, what year was this?
This
roughly?
was in the early 2000s. I started out as a volunteer, and have held positions as president and vice president. And other person was Belle Gilliam. Belle Gilliam, who was she was a long time one of the founding members.
Oh, she's the Southern Belle?
Southern Belle, yes.
I've heard of her.
And I'm still here because Belle made me promise her
right.
that I would never leave the museum.
And one day you're going to promise somebody else to do that.
It might be you.
Maybe. We're going to see. So who are some of your favorite historical figures in Apopka history?
Michael Gladden Jr.
He was the unofficial mayor.
Unofficial mayor, entrepreneur, owned a general store. Reverend Morris Chisholm. The Sanders. The list goes on because there were, but those who inspired me the most, their history stands out, was more Michael Gladden Jr. because he was the nucleus of the community. He was the go-to person. In his general store, he kept all documents, which today we're working with students from UCF to scan those very valuable documents that was kept in his safe in a store. And Sarah Mead, of course, who was an early black settler, who introduced a lot of the early black settlers to this region. Joseph Robard, who now in the recent years I discovered was the biracial son of William Delk, who was a Confederate soldier, and he fathered a son with one of his slaves. That's another
very
caveat.
Shocking story.
Yes, very interesting story. But as I've studied the history, and P. Ryan Slim, who was William Gladden Jr., who documented a lot of the early history, and one of my great inspirations as well, because I had hands-on experience meeting with and talking with William Gladden Jr. For almost 15 years, he poured into me a lot of the history.
Right, and this is why Francina, for anybody that knows her, is just a walk-in library of information, really. If you want to know something about Apopka, you ask her.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And what is your next venture or project that you're interested in doing, or that you're already planning to do?
Well, I float like a butterfly, and whatever. Right now, we're on this project with the Stewart family, who were, we're looking into that. It's quite interesting history of doing the Confederacy here in Apopka, the slaves, and it's quite intriguing, to say the least.
And we might be discovering some of the earliest black landowners in Apopka during the 1880s.
1880s, 1870s, late 1800s. Sarah Mead owned property in downtown Apopka, where you now have the Hilton Hotel. That was all known as Mead's Bottom. And people say, why do you say Mead's Bottom? Well, it's Mead's Bottom because it sets lower. It's
kind of like a bog of
it's
a little pond or swamp.
Yes, as you come in off. It's where Highway 436 dead ends, and it becomes 441.
Oh, okay. So that's right where Highland Manor is now.
Where Highland Manor is located was once known
as Mead's
Bottom. You also had the Apopka, the Orange Masonic Lodge, which is the oldest lodge that is still in existence in Apopka,
And in Florida.
in which slaves constructed the building back in 1859. It was completed.
So we don't have much time left, but just a few last questions for you. What is your favorite place for nature in Northwest Orange County? Because we haven't really talked about nature or the environment yet, but I know that that's something else that you deeply are invested in.
Rock Springs,
Right.
Kelly Park.
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
And boy, has it changed.
Yes.
Now you gotta
You gotta
make a
play
reservation.
lottery
Yep.
reservation.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And what do you hope for the future of Apopka in Northwest Orange County?
That many of the people embrace the rich history of this community and know where, who were the movers and the shakers,
Right.
who made all of this happen.
And why we're here, why
And
it's
we're
called
here.
Apopka.
Potato eating people.
Yeah, we're sweet potatoes to be exact.
And my family came here from Alabama because they were told money was growing on trees. So
Yep.
it was cheap. They could make more money picking oranges than they could picking cotton back in Alabama.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons their great migration
Right.
to Apopka.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your presence today. This is definitely not going to be our last time talking with Francina on this podcast. And if you're interested, again, please reach out to us, whether you want to be on the podcast or volunteer here at the museum. Just please reach out to us. We're trying to grow this community as big as possible. So, yeah. Thank you. See,
Bye.
y'all come back now, you hear?
Yes.